Leslie knew?
No. Nope.
There's so many
Elements and details.
I know.
Yeah. It does look really nice with the plants and staging.
It really does. Nice setup.
I was so prepared.
My period's due next week, and it's my first month of the seed cycle.
Yeah.
And usually around this time, my emotions are very on the surface, like I start getting things, whatever, and I'm not experiencing that really.
Oh,
I'm
good.
sleeping pretty good. So.
I think I'm noticing a
Oh,
difference.
because I'm on the wrong.
That
Okay, yeah.
I did just get some new packaging too, but I have to use these guys up. But yeah.
Okay, we're there. All right, so now that you've all been staring at a blank screen for a little while, I am Leslie Swedish, founder of the Moxie Women's Foundation, and I am very excited today to have two very special guests for this workshop. Cycle Wisdom, Reclaim Your Power. So if you didn't know it, your brain changes up to 25% throughout your cycle, and there's different ways that you can tap into your internal superpowers to be the best version of you. So we're going to start with Brook Pinkos. She is a women's health coach. Brooke and I started working together, I don't even know how many months ago. We started on a little bit more of like a weight loss type of journey where I was asking for diet and exercise plans, and we kind of switched gears completely. She started talking to me a little bit more about these feminine cycles, and it really piqued my interest, and I really felt like more people needed to hear about this. Shortly after I was tuned into this phenomenon, I met Dr. Sarah Avery, who is the founder of Moon Cycle Seed Company. So after Brooke is done telling us about our cycle and what to expect during different points in it, we have Dr. Sarah Avery, who's going to present us with some of her products that help to support your body throughout your cycle to maximize your potential. So without further ado, here is Brook Pinkos. Go ahead, Brooke.
Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? I wish
We're
I could
doing
see
good.
all of you. So I'll start by introducing myself, and then I'll go into kind of what you're going to learn today, and we'll get into it. So I'm Brooke, like Leslie said. I'm a women's health coach. I'm also a personal trainer. That's more of my background, and I'm studying to be an herbalist as well. So my passion is really helping women heal their bodies, heal their hormones, and reclaim like vibrant energy and their feminine power. And I normally do this through nutrition, movement, and mindset work. And I'm also obviously very passionate about helping women learn how to connect with their feminine rhythms and their feminine cycles. I'll get more into my story today, but I was just like blown away when I finally learned this information about like the things I didn't even know about my body. So I'm excited to teach that to all of you. And yeah, I'm also really passionate about just a holistic approach of really getting to the root of whatever's going on inside your body, and addressing some of the underlying issues like hormonal imbalances, blood sugar, gut stuff, to really heal your body. So today, we're going to be talking about our cycle, and I'm really gearing this more towards business and how to utilize your cycle with your career so that you can maximize your energy and your results throughout the month. So like Leslie said, our brain changes 25% throughout the month, which is not something that males experience, and we go through this change because of our fluctuating hormones. So we are really different creatures, like on a week-to-week basis. Our brains change, our immune system changes, our stress response, our hormones. I'm sure you've noticed some changes throughout the month, but I find once you really learn this information, you start to like pick up on different rhythms and how you're feeling throughout each phase, and it gives you a lot more compassion and grace for yourself, because instead of being like, oh, why don't I have any energy today? Why do I feel like I can't like speak fluidly in the presentation that I'm trying to give or in my meeting? It's kind of like, oh, this makes sense because I'm at this part of my cycle. And then you can start to structure your business a little bit better so that you're maximizing your superpowers, which we'll talk about in each phase of the cycle. So we'll go into a little bit masculine versus feminine energy, which I find is really important with business owners specifically, so that you don't reach burnout. And then I'll be talking about who cycling is for, and go into the hormonal changes that you experience. So I'll show you kind of what your cycle looks like and break it down into your 4 inner seasons, and then we'll talk about all of those superpowers. Sound good?
So just real quickly, Brooke, because we had to switch over to the Google Meet instead of Zoom, I don't know how to allow you to screen share. But if what you're going to be screen sharing is part of that PDF presentation, I can open it on my computer so that others can see it. If you just tell me what page of that PDF.
I have an option to present on Google Meet, so I might be able to.
Okay, we'll play.
And then if not, I'll try to send you it quick, but it's not part of the.
Oh, okay.
The thing.
So just let me know.
If not, I can just talk through it. I actually have a whiteboard because I just did a whole challenge this week about cycles. So I have a whiteboard that actually has the cycle too, so I could just show that as well.
Okay, whatever works.
We need to.
Making it up as we go along.
Also, just feel free to ask any questions if you're on the live stream on YouTube. Leslie will be watching the comments, so if you have comments, Leslie, feel free to like interrupt me and ask them, or same with anyone in the room. Whatever questions come up, or if you want to go deeper into everything, just let me know, and I will pause after each section and kind of ask if there's questions too.
Okay. So if you have questions, I have the microphone off, so just let me know to turn it on.
Okay. So first we're going to go through masculine and feminine energy. So I don't know if any of you have heard about the energies, but basically no matter what your gender is, males, females, everyone in between has these masculine and feminine energies. So just because you're a female doesn't mean you don't have a masculine energy. In fact, I find most of society lies heavily on the masculine, because that's what's the most prized in our society today, especially when it comes to a business environment. And then we also have this feminine energy, and I find when you can find a good balance between the two, it allows you to be way more productive and have just more balance in your workflow, especially without burning out. So let's talk about the difference first between your masculine and your feminine. And then we'll talk about maybe signs that you might be too far in one direction. So the masculine energy is a lot more of a linear energy, whereas the feminine is a lot more cyclical and flowy. So if we're going back to hormones, males' hormones are the exact same every single day. So it's that 24-hour circadian rhythm. And then we have an infradian rhythm, so throughout the whole month-long period, if you're a cyclical female, your hormones are cycling throughout 28 days on average, and that's called the infradian rhythm. But just energy-wise, it's more linear versus cyclical and flowy. The masculine's definitely more assertive and driven and disciplined. It's really just taking action, getting stuff done, being productive, kind of being more logical. It's more about doing, safe and stable. So I think about it like a structure. So you really want a structure, especially when it comes to business. And again, our society is very about just getting the most things done, getting the most accomplished. And especially if you own a business or if you are in a career that requires a lot of you, sometimes it can get really out of hand. And the way I see this manifest in people's health is just having way too high stress, which leads to high cortisol, which is one of our stress hormones, and that can cause a lot of downstream effects in your body. So when we are really stressed, especially as females, we actually are a little bit more sensitive to stress in our environment. Especially if you are in your reproductive years, because we're just like sensing out if it's a good time to reproduce and have babies. So whether that's something you want or something you don't want or something you've already done, when you're in your cyclical years, that's something that your body is always attuned to. So when you're super stressed, your body doesn't know if it's because you're psychologically stressed. There's no difference between you just like being stressed about something related to work, or being stressed about something that's going on with your family or whatever, or a physical stressor. Like your body kind of always thinks that it's like in physical threat and danger and like has to run from a tiger. So what happens when the stress response is too heightened is your body goes into this like fight or flight mode. So some symptoms in your body you might experience would be things like not being able to sleep. Maybe you wake up at like 2 in the morning. You might have a lot more cravings for like salt and stuff like that. Maybe getting like lightheaded and dizzy, extreme fatigue. And then other things in your body, like your reproductive, like the energy will go away from some of your functions that you need to keep you alive on a day-to-day basis and towards that like muscle center, so more in your periphery, so that you have the energy and blood flow more to your muscles to be able to run away from the threat. But that means your gut sometimes gets impacted when you're too high stress. So you might have trouble digesting your food. Sometimes your digestion actually slows down, so you're extracting every little bit of calories from the food. It goes away from your reproductive system because when you're really stressed out, why would you need to be producing a baby? Like it's not a good, safe time in the environment. And your body also tends to hold on to fat. Because again, it's like that survival mechanism. It's like, okay, we're in a stressful state, we're in a famine, I need to preserve all of my energy that I can. So, in terms of a business sense, when you're just going all the time and don't have this balance of the feminine, which we'll talk about next, it can really lead you to this burnout state where you don't have energy, you're struggling to get through the day, your brain isn't working properly, you're having a lot of symptoms in your body, and hopefully you're starting to realize how this doesn't actually benefit you in the long term. So you might be able to go on this like grind for a little bit. There's seasons in business always. There's times when you do have to push and give it your all, but you also need the balance of rest and recovery. Because if your brain's not working well and you're not having any energy, it doesn't really allow you to perform at your best at the end of the day. So we'll go more into this today, but this is kind of just setting up for why you need some more of the feminine in your life. So the feminine balances out the masculine, and this is more of like a cyclical, flowy energy. So it's a really creative energy. Again, like our womb, our sacrum is the center of our creativity. We go through these cycles every single month to produce a creation. So that might be a new life. But it also can be a project in your business, it can be a creative endeavor, it can be really anything that you're wanting to like birth into the universe, which again, it doesn't have to be like a physical thing. A lot of times it's just like, what project do I want to bring out? And you can use your cycle as a framework for that. As females, we're also very intuitive, so kind of like getting some insights, like I don't know if you've ever taken the time to actually rest, and that puts you in more of a receptive energy. So the other thing that happens when you're just like trying to go and figure things out, sometimes you just get like stuck on a problem and you're like, oh, I can't figure this out, like for the life of me, like what decision I should make, and then maybe you go on a walk or you get in the shower and you're not thinking about it at all, and then boom, something just pops into your mind and you're like, oh my God, I've been trying to figure this out all day and this brilliant insight just dropped in. So when you give space, that's when your intuition really shines and you can kind of like channel amazing ideas and creative insight in. When you're too much of the pushing energy, it really dampens your creativity. It's like squashes the creativity completely. So that's where the feminine really shines, that intuition, the creativity, and also the resting, receptive energy, receiving energy. So you really want to learn how to balance the masculine and the feminine, and our cycle offers a really great opportunity to do this. As feminine creatures, we're also a lot more like nurturing and really collaborative instead of like that competitive side. So both of these have their benefits. Again, it's not like one's bad and one's good. It's if you're imbalanced in either, it can kind of lead to some issues. So let's talk about kind of both sides of the spectrum, and you can see where you might find yourself. So think about it in whatever area of your life that you're trying to work on. Sometimes you might show up a similar way in all areas. So if you're thinking about your business and maybe your health, like where are you at? So if you tend to be maybe too masculine, you might be too structured and too rigid. And this can, again, like leading to the burnout symptoms. You never let yourself rest. And you're always just go, go, go. So you might not be as creative, and you might be really hard on yourself and never think you're doing good enough and never feel like you're producing enough and just always feeling like this burden, this weight on your shoulders at the end of the day, like, oh, I didn't get everything done on my to-do list. And then if you're going too feminine, this can also be a bad thing because you need that masculine structure. When you don't have any structure, it kind of just like lets things go loose. You might be lacking direction, you might be lacking any drive, so you're not really producing what your goals and your desires are for your life, or your business, or your health. So you might like have all these dreams and plans and have all these good intentions, but then you're never following through with anything because you don't actually have a plan in place. So notice, I guess just asking all of you, like where do you think you fall more? To be more on like the masculine side, or do you think you're more on the feminine side? Like what do you think you need more of to help balance you out?
I mean, I'll go first. I know I'm absolutely more on the masculine side, and it takes a lot of work for me to put that down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you want to talk about at all anything about your story of just like what you notice when you are too masculine, like what happens?
Oh, absolutely. Burnout, 110% burnout. I also can, I've been trying to tap more into my feminine side. I have been working on taking it more easy. And, you know, with reducing some of the physical burnout from feeling so compelled to have to sit and grind and drive so hard for both the foundation and Moxie Coffee, some of the things that I've noticed that are much better from pulling away from that mentality are, you know, definitely weight loss and less burnout, more productivity, and absolutely the digestive portion of it. You know, I think you and I, you know, I did that detox diet and I was like, oh my God, I did this detox diet and everything's so great. And I think what I've learned over the course of the last 2 weeks is I don't think it was so much a detox with gluten and things like that, so much as it was cortisol, because my stress levels are down. I'm not eating quite as well as I was before, but I'm also not experiencing the stomach upset and bloating and things that were happening when I was doing the detox. So I think being forced into the detox forced me into taking better care of myself, forced me into more of that feminine energy, which has helped all around.
Definitely. Yeah. And also, I find when we're really like pushing really hard at something, and again, there's seasons, there's times to do that, but a lot of times what suffers when you're only focused on one area of your life is a lot of the other areas go down. So you might be really driven towards your business, and maybe your relationships aren't good, your health isn't good, and my perspective fully is like, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So even if you're driving to be really successful or make all this money and you don't have your help, like you're not going to be able to enjoy any of the fruits of your labor. So like, what is the point? And you can really, as a business owner, choose your path. And really the way that you build your business and continue to grow it is what you're going to keep having to do. So setting up structures, calling in support, like making sure that you have this balance from the get-go and have boundaries. Like, no, like my personal self-care needs to be a part of this because it's going to allow me to excel in all of the areas.
Absolutely.
Anyone else in the room? Do you feel like you're more masculine, feminine?
I think I go between them both. I do find myself like burn out after a while, being more on the masculine side, I find, and then I have to just check in with myself and try to balance it. Get more sleep, eat more, because sometimes when I'm busy, I don't really get to eat.
That was my first step.
Was it?
Yeah, eat lunch.
Yeah, I like pick throughout the day when it's convenient, but it's like just try to be more regular to say.
I'm definitely more masculine.
Katie, no.
Oh, no. We're together though, right?
Yeah, and I think, as it relates to business, I think I err on the side of the more masculine, but when it comes to friends and family and relationships, I am definitely more of that feminine where you're giving and caring a little more than sometimes you're caring for yourself. So I guess it just kind of depends on what facet of life we're talking about too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I caught part of the first one, but that's such a common thing I see with all the women I work with. Either it's just they have a business or they're working for a business, tending to just skip meals and not eat and pretend that it's not important, or they're too stressed out, they're not hungry, and again, that really leads to a lot of problems. Like I've had clients that were on a weight loss journey and they weren't like eating, and your body's like, oh, I'm gonna hold on to everything, and then I encourage them to eat more and they actually see better results. And also like our mental state, our emotional state, our physical state are all so connected. Like we talked about stress, like your thoughts can impact your hormones and what's going on. But I like to think about this sometimes, like you tend to like hold on to a lot of the weight on your physical body that you're carrying mentally. So this might be due to like stress eating or emotional eating, or even just like there are certain conditions that can manifest in your body depending on like what's going on with your emotional and mental state. So I think it's just important to think about that sometimes. So let's go into how to come back and forth into balance and tune into your cycle, because I find that this is an amazing framework to kind of get more into that balanced state. And first I want to just talk about who this is for. So anyone who identifies as a female, like you can start syncing with your cycle. So it doesn't mean that you need to be actually going through a physical cycle and bleeding every month. You might be experiencing some symptoms of like lacking a menstrual cycle. You might have had a hysterectomy and had your uterus removed, so you don't have a cycle. You might be perimenopausal or postmenopausal. No matter where you're at, you can sync with your cycle and live a little bit more cyclically, because as females, we are just naturally apt to live a little bit more in sync with nature and the moon and these cycles of life. So one of the ways that you'll do this, if you don't like physically bleed every single month, maybe you have irregular cycles, no cycle, whatever it is by syncing up with the moon. And it's really convenient because today is the new moon, which is when a lot of women bleed. So this is a really interesting fact when I learned that most women used to bleed like all at the same time, either on the new moon or the full moon. And if you talk to people, like a lot of people do end up bleeding around this time, like maybe a few days before or a few days after, because of the light pollution and the fact that we're like never outside. It kind of messes up this like infradian rhythm, just like the sun affects our circadian rhythm, the moon, and like being outside, if we were like outside at night, connected with the moonlight, it would kind of affect our cycle. But I think that's so interesting that our flow really syncs up normally with the moon cycles.
I have a quick question about that.
Yeah.
What does birth control have any effect on that? Because I know, typically you take a white pill instead of a blue pill. It doesn't really matter where the phase of the moon is.
Yeah. So when you are on birth control, like there's two ways you can kind of go about it. So some people that are taking the birth control pill do still bleed. What I want to let you all know, if you don't know this, is that you're not actually having a menstrual cycle when you're on hormonal birth control. So if you have a copper IUD, that's the only form of non-hormonal birth control that I know of at this point, which is typically like if you're not comfortable with tracking your cycle and doing more fertility awareness methods to prevent pregnancy, or if you're trying to get pregnant, you can use it for that too. But if you're on like a hormonal type of birth control and you're bleeding, it's called a breakthrough bleed. So when you're on this hormonal birth control, your hormones are all flatlined. So you're getting pumped with synthetic hormones all throughout the month, and really the only reason that the drug companies introduced that like sugar pill week was because women were uncomfortable with the fact that they weren't bleeding and getting their period every month. So I just want you all to know, if you didn't know this, you're not having a period. It's called a breakthrough bleed. And while you are on hormonal birth control, basically what happens is your brain is completely disconnected from your ovaries. So the communication there is cut off for however many years you're on it, which for a lot of women is like 10, 20 years, for a long time, sometimes even longer. And I talk a lot about this because I'm really passionate about educating on this, because I think most women, when they get put on it, sometimes it's not even for preventing pregnancy. A lot of times it's for cramps, PMS, endometriosis, PCOS, like acne. Maybe it's to regulate your cycle, which is a complete myth because it doesn't regulate your cycle. And another myth is that it mimics pregnancy, because it's actually not doing that. It's basically putting you in a state of menopause. So when you want to sync with your cycle, like when you have a bleed, you could use that, just knowing that it changes things a little bit. Like when I'm energies that you feel, you won't really be experiencing those because your hormones are just, again, more flatlined. But you can also use the moon cycle, the same as other people who don't have a cycle, again, like perimenopausal, postmenopausal, irregular cycles. You can still sync up with the moon to tune into the cyclical rhythm. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Birth control? Did we know those things?
No, I definitely.
That's cool.
What's that?
I didn't know the moon thing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm no longer on birth control, but it's the first time in my life since I was probably, I think 15 or 16 when I was put on it to regulate my cycle. So it's very, very interesting.
I'd love to know, just so I can kind of read the room and like make sure I'm speaking to you. If you don't mind sharing, if you're comfortable, of course, like where you guys are all at in your life cycle and also your menstrual cycle or birth control, like that kind of stuff, if you don't mind sharing.
I will share. I'm 42 years old, for the first time not on birth control anymore, and I don't honestly know where I am in my cycle because I got new phones and my apps got disconnected, so now I know nothing.
Oh boy. That's dangerous.
Yeah, I'm like...
We'll be having another little one here.
Oh no, my husband got fixed.
Oh good.
So, no babies, no more babies. 40 and pregnant was not okay.
Aw. I don't mind sharing. I've been on the same birth control since I was 16, so I'm pretty much flatlined, like you said. I'm disconnected. I'm probably part of a case study, actually, I think. The Nuva ring. I put my ring back in on Tuesday. So that's where I'm at in my cycle.
Okay.
I don't mind sharing either. I'm 37 and I've been on birth control since 18. So, and I've tried everything. I feel like I've reacted differently to each thing, but I've been on I've had an IUD for about 3 years now, and I like it because I don't have to think about it or remember a pill or whatever. So,
Probably have a different place now, right?
yeah, it's coming up.
Oh, boy.
37, I'm like, wait, well, I get to it, you know, so I'm in that stage now in life. But, so yeah, I feel like this has been the best option for me hormonally, like where I'm at. It's still comforting getting my period to me, but.
Yeah, and I was on hormonal birth control from 14 to 24, and then I just stopped because I along the way of learning about seed cycling and many other things that brought me to that point, I kind of tried to eliminate that from my lifestyle. So that has its own challenges, of course, but
How was it coming off of it? That terrifies me. Because I have been on the same one for like ever.
yeah.
I'm so scared to come off of it.
It was certainly an adjustment over the course of me. I would say it took me about a year to really get to know my body again.
Yeah.
But there are many things like the wisdom that Brooke is bringing in and different like lifestyle habits you can adopt to help with that transition. Yeah. But it was interesting learning these are my cramps. These are
Oh gosh. I
I
haven't
don't
had a cramp in like ever, so I seriously just think I'm gonna stay on until I die.
Well, I think that it's gonna be especially scary for women to think about, doing away with birth control that, don't intend to have any children and don't have a partner that has taken care of, taken that step.
Yeah.
If it weren't for my husband taking that step, there's no way I would have
That's the only way
Just-
I would.
discontinued birth control, no matter how crazy and off kilter it made me. And part of the reason that I decided to get off of birth control around the same time that we decided to have a baby, but I was already needing to change my birth control because it was making me absolutely crazy.
Really?
Like it was not okay. I had the
See, I'm
Mirena
afraid of
hiding.
becoming crazy because I'm so like steady. It makes me really nervous.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so it's good to just know for me where everyone's at, and yeah, I'm definitely not against birth control by any means. I think that it has done a lot for women in general. Like it really allowed us to progress as a gender, getting into the workforce more, like not being at risk of getting pregnant any second. So it has benefited us a lot, and just being able to really have that control. But there's also a lot of risks associated with being on a birth control pill that obviously our male counterparts don't have to deal with. They've actually done studies on like male birth controls, and the guys were like, no, this makes me feel different, I'm moody, like a lot of the same exact symptoms that females report. So some of the risks, I just think it's important to be aware of, and there's like whole books about this subject if you're interested in learning more. It can sometimes impact your fertility if you're looking for that, but that is not the only reason. To maybe think about birth control, it can also impact your gut, it can impact your neurological system, it can increase your risk of breast cancer and stroke and some cardiovascular type things. Blood clotting is a very common thing with birth control. So some people it works fine for, but I would say if you're thinking of transitioning off, it's good to go through, like I like to have my clients do some type of like a detox protocol that I normally bring them through, and starting to sync with your cycle like we're going to talk about today can actually ease some of your symptoms coming off, and doing things like seed cycling like Sarah's going to talk about. So there's ways to make your transition off easier. I would say if you have had like symptoms before you went on birth control, normally they kind of come back with vengeance, because when you're put on birth control, especially if it is for painful periods, nausea, cramping, all of these things, birth control isn't actually fixing what's going on. So there's still those imbalances under the surface. You're just not experiencing the symptoms anymore. So it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it. It's like taking a painkiller for a splinter. It's like you're not feeling it for a while, but then as soon as you remove the birth control, normally those symptoms come back. And I think it's really empowering to be able to take your health into your own hands and really like make sure you can balance your hormones out naturally, because our hormones are so important. They actually do a lot for our bodies. We need like that estrogen for our brain health, especially as women. We're at high risk of Alzheimer's disease. We need our hormones for our bone health. We're at a high risk of osteoporosis. So especially, again, some of you may be transitioning more into like the perimenopause, menopause. I think like making sure your hormones are balanced before that point can really also ease your symptoms going into that phase of your life as well. Minimize like the hot flashes and some of the more hard symptoms that you might hear about. Like that doesn't have to be your fate. Like I think a lot of people talk about that period of being like, oh, this is going to be awful, like because they normally make you come off birth control at that point of your life. It can be dangerous to stay on birth control. So just some information. If you guys want to learn more, feel free to connect with me. But it's just most doctors don't have you kind of get consent to all of the risk factors. It's kind of just like, here it is. And I mean, same thing for me. Like I went on birth control with my sisters when I was like in high school, you know, like I was just like, perfect. Give it to me. Like I didn't know about any of these things. So I think it's just important to have informed consent and just know what the benefits and the risks are, and then make the best decision for you. And maybe that is hormonal birth control, and maybe it's there's other options too. So just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to do all of this was just that these conversations aren't being had anywhere. At 42 years old, this is, the conversations that started with you a couple of months ago was the first time that these conversations had been had. So I thank you for bringing not only awareness to myself personally, but taking the time out so that I have the opportunity to spread the word to my community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Like I was also shocked when I found out this information. So I didn't go a ton into my background, but basically I went to school for kinesiology, movement science, and was learning about female physiology in regards to exercise, and a lot of the stuff that I've learned since, it wasn't covered at all, the difference between male and female physiology. So once I started learning about this, I was a personal trainer at a big corporate gym for about 5 years before I started my own business, working with a ton of different clients, and I kept seeing all of these similar issues with my female clients, and I'm like, what is going on? First, I would work with a couple, or I was working with a lot of male and female clients, and the males were just like, yeah, I can drop 10 pounds in a week, and then the females would be doing the exact same thing and see zero results, or be gaining weight or lose 1 pound. So I really got interested in digging deeper into the research of women's health, and there has to be something else going on. And I was also seeing a lot of women with all of these different health conditions, such as PCOS, hypothyroidism, autoimmune conditions, and it's all of these things are really on the rise for females. So when I found out about my cycle, and you normally don't learn about it except when you're in middle school, which is a very brief, disempowering, not really an empowering thing. It's my period is a curse, this is the worst thing, being a woman sucks. And then also maybe revisit it if you are trying to conceive, because you're oh, I can only really get pregnant for 5 days. It's a lot harder than it seems. So I'm just so passionate about having these conversations as well, because I was I'm almost 30, and I'm how did I not know about any of this information? It's not talked about.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
So when you're tracking, how does this relate to when women cycle together, when they sync up? Because I feel just when you think you have a handle on it, another woman.
You cut off for a second. How does it?
I was asking how this relates to when women sync up together, because I feel it's so variable. Every time you're around a new woman, it's chaos again. My workplace is like this. That's why I'm asking. I've gone rogue because I'm on birth control, but it's another.
Yeah. So one thing, women definitely can tend to sync up together. The other theory that I have is like women tend to again sync up near the moon cycles too. So I find a lot of women will be like bleeding around the same time, and a lot of times it is near like the new moon or the full moon. And sometimes you can flip depending on who you're surrounded with, but yeah, that definitely does happen. And I'd be interested to know maybe, so today is the new moon. So this is when a lot of women bleed, like around this period. So maybe you're noticing this in your work environment, or, I mean, birth control definitely impacts this a lot if you're on birth control. Typically you're taking like sugar pills, or there's like a certain part of the month where you would bleed, depending on how you're taking it. But notice that, and then the full moon is, so that would be day 14 of your cycle. We'll go into cycles next, and I'll explain that whole thing, but that's on December 18th. So think about that. For, again, if you're not having a cycle or anything like that, that's what you'll use when we're talking about the cyclical thing. New moon would be like your menstrual phase, start of your menstrual phase, day 1. Full moon would be the peak at your ovulation. So let me try to share my screen and we'll go into the cycle. Let's see how this works. Share screen, allow. Okay.
No, we don't.
So I'm gonna pull this up. Can you guys say something and let me know if you can still hear me and see this?
Hi, Brooke, we can see that and hear you.
Perfect. Okay, just want to make sure because I can't see you anymore. Okay, so this is your full cycle. So I'm going to go through this. Again, this is just like the natural female cycle, which a lot of people don't really revisit often, and it kind of ties into how your brain's changing and what superpowers get turned on during the phases of the month. So as you can see at the bottom, it kind of like lays it out into 3 phases: the follicular, ovulation, and luteal phase. I break it up a little bit differently into 4 phases of the month, and it kind of just correlates to where your energy and your mood and all of that stuff is during the month. So those are the little black arrows which I'll talk through, and you should see my pointer too. So day 1 of your cycle, or on the new moon, this would be day 1. That's typically the first day that you bleed. So at this point, pretty much all of your hormones are going to be at their lowest point for like this part of the cycle. So kind of towards the end of the cycle, your hormones are also at their lowest point. So I generally start the menstrual phase around a couple of days before your period. Again, 28 is kind of average. Actually, the new average is more like 29. But your cycles might range a little bit from like 24 maybe days long to 35. Typically below 22 days, if you're like having them closer together than 22 days, is normally indicating a problem, or over 35 days. So just tracking your cycle can help you figure those things out. But this is your menstrual phase. So starting a couple days before your cycle, going into your bleed up until day 5. So when your hormones are at their lowest lowest level, so is your energy. So you might experience, I'm sure all of you have noticed this, and honestly people on birth control typically notice this too, just being a lot more tired during their period in this phase of the month. So you might still notice some of these subtle energies, but again, you won't have all of these peaks and stuff when you're on birth control. It's kind of just more flatlined. And then starting on day 6, this is more the follicular phase, day 6 until day 12. So this is when your hormones start going on the rise, and as your hormones rise, especially estrogen, it gives you a lot more energy throughout the month. A lot of people will also break the menstrual cycle into 2 phases. So from menstruation, day 1, to ovulation, that's typically called more the follicular phase, and then from ovulation to menstruation, that's typically more the luteal phase, and this is what you'll use for seed cycling, so I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that too. I'll talk more about the different hormones next, but from the day about 13, so kind of this is where you're starting to peak your energy at ovulation. This is when you're the most fertile, this is when you're releasing the egg, and till day 19 about, your hormones are at the peak, and then they're starting to go down, but your estrogen's still kind of high. So throughout this whole period, you'll feel pretty good energy. And then from day 20 to about day 26, this is more, I call it the more luteal phase, and this is when your progesterone is higher relative to your estrogen. If you experience more symptoms of cramps, PMS, acne, tender breasts, painful breasts, that kind of thing, which is common. A lot of people experience this with their period, but it is not normal. You should not be experiencing those things, and typically it's because of a hormonal imbalance. Estrogen and progesterone, we always look at relative balance, so it's typically when estrogen is higher and progesterone is lower in comparison that you'll experience more of these PMS symptoms leading up to your period in the luteal phase, especially in late luteal. So I'm going to go back through and kind of talk more about what's going on with your hormones. So at the beginning of your cycle is when you're obviously shedding your uterine lining. And then FSH starts to increase a little bit, and this is follicle stimulating hormone. So this stimulates a follicle, which are in your ovaries, and these hold, your ovaries hold the eggs for your entire lifetime. So when this gets stimulated, it stimulates one follicle to mature, a couple follicles, but only one is like the main follicle that matures and gets released. Is the one that releases the egg at ovulation. So that'll start preparing the follicle stimulating hormone. And then as you go through, estrogen starts to increase, and this increases your lining. So again, your body is preparing you to hold a pregnancy should an egg get fertilized. So estrogen's increasing in the first half of the cycle, you have a lot more energy. So especially like the follicular through the ovulatory phase, this is like, I like to call it the lit AF half of your cycle. So you're like a lot more energy and drive and all of these things going on. And then the second half of your cycle, when progesterone is more the key, I like to call like the chill AF time. So it's a lot more of like that chill hormone balancing out estrogen. Heading into ovulation, this is when all of your hormones are at the peak. Testosterone isn't on here, but that also peaks at this time, so it can increase your sex drive, it increases your energy. You might notice some of the more feminine characteristics, so estrogen is more responsible for that. Like your lips will be a little plumper, your breasts might be a little plumper, you're a little bit more curvy, we got that feminine vibe going on. This also is a time when we're naturally more attractive. So they've done studies on servers, and servers actually get higher tips during their ovulatory phase. And you might notice, like once I started kind of aligning with my cycle, like I started noticing maybe getting even like more compliments at this time of the month, or feeling more confident on camera, that kind of stuff. So we'll talk more about the work side of it, but it's a really good time to like get in front of people, sell your stuff, like have these conversations, because you're just naturally more attractive. And your sex drive is also higher, the highest at this time of the month too. Again, your body's like, one of the main goals is procreation, keeping you alive is number one, number two is reproducing. So whether that's your goal or not, that's what your body's like kind of asked to do. And then after this time, so LH is your luteinizing hormone, that stimulates the release of the egg, and the egg, again from your ovaries, travels down the fallopian tubes, I'm like, why am I blanking? Down the fallopian tubes to possibly be met by a sperm. So the egg is only viable for 24 hours. So you have a 24-hour period, generally, where the egg can get fertilized, and this is another thing that some people don't actually realize. They're like, I feel like we're taught when we're younger, like, you can get pregnant all month long, like, so like suppress your hormones all month long because it's a big risk, but really you can only get pregnant for like 5 days. So sperm can last like 5-6 days max. So maximum, there's only like a 6-day period where you can actually get pregnant through here, because the sperm might like, get into here, and then the egg might drop here, and it could get fertilized, if that makes sense. So there are ways to track your cycle. And one of the ways by doing this, when ovulation happens, your basal body temperature rises. So taking your temperature every day is one form of birth control that's actually been approved by the FDA. There's certain companies doing that if you're looking for another option. And then estrogen starts to decline. When the egg gets released, that's when progesterone actually starts to increase. So one of the reasons that some people have low progesterone is because they are not ovulating. So ovulation is also a star player in the menstrual cycle. Most people only think about menstruation, but ovulation needs to happen in order for you to have these good healthy hormones. Progesterone helps us stabilize our mood. It makes us really chill and calm and grounded and centered. So if you feel like a crazy person in your PMS time, this could be due to progesterone. You might not be ovulating. Obviously, if you're on birth control, you are not ovulating unless you're on the copper IV, which you will still have a cycle and ovulate. So that's just a sign of an imbalance, possibly, like again, if you're having these PMS symptoms. So estrogen rises a little bit, but progesterone is really the main driver of this time. So you'll feel a lot more calm, relaxed. This time you're more like outgoing, open, want to connect with people. This half of the cycle, you're more like internal, kind of turning your energy inwards. Energy is a little bit lower. Again, with estrogen on the decline. Hormones at their lowest level here, your energy really starts to go down, but it also opens you up to some other gifts that we'll talk about next. Any questions on this cycle?
No, I think we've got it.
Awesome. Okay, let me see how this stops sharing. So this cycle changes not only, okay, there we go. So it not only changes like your workflow stuff, but it also changes your ability to burn fat, your endurance, your sex drive. It can impact, there's ways to sync with your exercise, nutrition, all of these things with your cycle, which I love talking about as well. But today we're focusing mostly on the business part of things. So now that you kind of have an overview of the cycle, we're going to go into deeper each of the phases of the month and what superpowers, as I like to call them, get turned on by your changing chemistry. And again, like tuning into these subtle cycles, and just really honoring how you're feeling above all is really important. So as I go through this, just know that like everyone is a little bit different. You might be feeling different things at different times of the month, and there's other things other than your hormones that impact how you're feeling. So maybe you got no sleep the night before, and you're really stressed out. Even though you're in your ovulatory phase, you might not be feeling like a peak energy and peak amazingness. So like make sure you're listening to your body above all. And one of my favorite ways to really tune into this is by journaling every day and writing down like what day I'm on of my cycle and what phase that correlates to. And over time, I think it just helps you go deeper and deeper and like really learn your own body. But for anyone, I think this is a great way to just like track how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, because our body is always giving us signs and symptoms. Basically, like the symptoms that are coming up help you decipher like what's going on under the surface. So if you're not feeling amazing energy all the time, if you have zero sex drive, if you're experiencing painful periods, PMS, if you're bloating, if you're gassy, like all of these things are like the way your body communicates with you. So I'm really passionate about teaching my clients like what all of these little signals mean, and instead of being like, oh, I hate my body, why am I like this? Like understanding how to treat yourself with more compassion and get to, well, what's actually out of balance, and how can I use nutrition and lifestyle practices to help bring your body back into balance so you feel freaking amazing every single day. Okay, so the menstrual cycle. So as you kind of saw, sometimes they break it into two halves. So more like your follicular phase as your energy is starting to increase, and your ovulation where you're like peak energy. This is more the masculine time. So it's the time when you really want to like drive in your business. You have a lot of energy to exert outwards. onto other people. If you're a mother, if you're a caregiver, if you have a partner, if you have pets, plants, whatever you have, this is the time to like give. Like give all of your energy, abundance of energy, and also to your work environment. This is also that more like masculine, get stuff done time. And then the second half, when progesterone is more on the rise, which is more your luteal and your menstrual phase, is when you kind of want to start turning your energy inwards, focusing more on yourself, doing more tasks at work alone, instead of like all of these meetings, like just focus on you and like really wrapping things up. And kind of like preserving your energy. So we'll talk more about each of those times in depth in each of the phases. So we're going to start with the menstrual phase. So the menstrual phase, again, like a lot of us are taught in society that like, this is a curse, having a period is the worst thing ever. And I think one of the reasons is because we're not taught about any of the benefits or the ways our bodies actually change. So when I learned this information, it was so empowering to know that there actually is some benefits of having a menstrual cycle, and it's for a reason, and our bodies as women are really cool. And it really offers you a unique kind of like layout of how to bring your creations and your work projects to life in a way that makes sense for our bodies and our energy, like living in a really male-centered society. So starting with the menstrual phase, I'll go through our superpowers in each, and you guys hopefully have packets or you'll get them. I made a little PDF for you so you can take something home with you. Feel free to take notes as well as we're going through it. So the menstrual phase I normally count as like day 27 about, so a couple days before your bleed, and then all the way through your bleed up until about day 5. This is correlated again with the new moon, and also it's more like your inner winter. So we have 4 phases, 4 seasons. Inner winter is the time when like all of the world is really quiet, like happening right now. The energy from all the plants is coming inwards down to the ground. Animals are going into hibernation. Like this is what we want to do too. We want to tune into these like natural rhythms a little bit more. So our superpowers in this phase are intuition and creativity, or intuition and evaluation, sorry. Intuition and evaluation. So what happens in our brain during our menstrual phase is actually the left and right hemispheres of the brain are the most connected through the corpus callosum, which is like basically the center of your brain, and you have the 2 hemispheres, and this is also like you have the masculine and the feminine side of your brain. They're the most connected, and this really opens yourself up to being a lot more intuitive. So again, like once you start learning about this and like tuning into your energy, you might start noticing these little subtleties throughout the month. But so I have an online business as like a women's health coach. One of the main parts of my job is creating content, especially like online. So I noticed at this time of the month, like I have a lot more just like random thoughts, like, oh, I should talk about that, oh, I should create this, and I'm much more creative. During this phase of the month, you really want to work on slowing down. So this is the perfect time of the month to flex that feminine and really rest and retreat. So ideally, if you can, you just want to like slow down as much as you can. Maybe it's only taking, like I know a lot of us, when you're in like a really highly stressful work environment and you have so much to do, it feels like you have so much on your plate, it's hard to even imagine taking off a little bit, slowing down a little bit. So sometimes this can be actually the hardest phase for people to align with, just because again, it's like our push culture. But what happens when you're not ever resting is that you can lead to a lot of burnout. So the benefits of this time are when you do rest and when you do take time and give yourself that space, this is the time when you might get a big drop of creative insight about what you should be doing for the next month. So this is the time when you're like, oh my God, I had this brilliant idea, because you took maybe whatever you can give yourself is amazing. Most people can't take a full day off work when they have their first day of their bleed, but kind of give yourself like an hour of extra me time at some point in the day, or even if it's like 30 minutes to do some self-care, take a bath, indulge in pleasure. Maybe it's just like laying in the grass and looking at the clouds and just like have a time where you're just trying to do absolutely nothing. So I like to call it like a moon cave, like go into your room, go into your bed, just lay there like with the intention of doing nothing. And like how often do any of us give ourselves the time to do that? Normally not often. So this doesn't mean scrolling on your phone, it's more of like an intentional time with you to reflect on the past month, especially in your business, like how are things going, like take the time to actually dive into those things, give yourself some time for new creations and ideas and insight to come in. You can also, if you have any things that you're trying to work through, you can bleed on it. So trying to like, again, your intuition is heightened, so it's a good time if you're like concerned about a certain decision. It's like peak intuition, you're like, okay, I know what to do. So making sure you're having boundaries. This is the time to say no to other people, saying yes to yourself, slowing down as much as you can. And really, the whole idea is just like, can you give yourself 1% of what you maybe would really love to do, which is maybe just take the whole menstrual phase off. Like, can you just give yourself 1% and maybe like allow yourself to slow down or book it into your calendar, this half hour that you're just going to rest and be open to receiving and maybe do some more self-care, journaling, and stuff like that, meditation. So just note, I just want you to note like where your stress is on a regular basis on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do you feel like your stress is? Most of the time when I ask this, people are like 7 to 10 all the time. And this is not the place to live your life. So it doesn't matter if you're male or female, all of us as humans need downtime and need time to rest and recover and reset. And this was also the hardest one for me because especially coming from a corporate training world, like I was working 6 days a week, I had 1 day off, I was meeting with clients back to back to back, I hardly had time to eat. I was at the gym at 6 a.m. Sometimes I was at the gym until 7 p.m. Like I was full on in my masculine. So when I started trying to apply these things, when I was starting my own business, I was like, I can't rest. I have so much to get done. And then as the more I started practicing and I started giving myself like little inches at a time, and they grew because I saw how much more effective I was throughout the whole rest of the month. So self-care isn't selfish. And the more time you take for yourself, one, your creativity is heightened, and also you're better able to care for all of the other people in your life and really stay at peak energy. So going into the inner spring, you have this energy and this rising drive without getting to the burnout point. Like you're renewed and you're refreshed and you're like, let's go, I'm ready to like start a new project. So spring, again, is a time when you like plant seeds. You're planting your intentions and you're starting new things. So in a work environment, this means starting your new project. So you got this amazing insight because you took time to rest and reflect and receive in your menstrual phase, and now you're taking action. So you're starting out slow, like figuring out your goals, your plans, your dreams for the coming month. You're maybe filling out your planner is a good thing to do at this time, and just like keeping in mind where you're going to be at different phases of your cycle, so you're not planning like your biggest presentation of the year during your bleed. So fill out your planner, and then like what goals, what intentions, what projects do you want to focus on for the month ahead is really your inner spring, which again is that follicular phase. So this is about day 6 to day 12, and just remember all of these flow together. Like it's not like a hard stop, like hormones are here and then hormones are here. It's like a gradual curve. All of the things flow into one another. So tune into your own energy. Your superpowers during this phase are creativity and planning. So as your estrogen rises, it increases your brain's working memory potential. So you can better handle complex tasks and complex assignments. So you can just think about that as it relates to whatever work or whatever things you want to channel this energy into. So it's a fresh start. You're starting to turn your energy outwards, give to others, because you took that little bit of time for you. So now you have so much energy for everyone else and all of your projects and all of the big things. You're renewed, you're refreshed. So avoid being really forceful during this phase. Like again, it's like you're emerging, you're like a little sprout coming out of the ground. If you like kill yourself, you can easily squash all the energy you just renewed. So avoid forceful doing, be more like playful with your creations. And then heading into your inner summer, again, this is the peak time. So you are superwoman at this phase. This is about day 13, 19, really. For most people on a 28-day cycle, like the peak is around day 14, so everywhere around that time, really you have like epic energy. And if you are, again, a mother, a caregiver, you're taking care of other people in your job, whatever it is, like this is the time when you can do everything. You can give to everyone, you have all this energy, you have energy for your job, and like, again, you're superwoman. You can do all of the things during this phase. So it sounds really amazing, but the risk of being in this phase all month long, again, being in this like too hyper giving state all month long, is you risk kind of like losing yourself in the process. So as females, we're naturally nurturers, we're naturally empathetic, we naturally want to give. And sometimes when you're an overgiver and you don't take time for yourself, this can actually be like a trauma response. You know, you just like feel like you need to produce and be successful and give to everyone else because you're worried that if you don't, you won't be loved and accepted. So just keep that in the back of your mind if you have a tendency to do this too often. It's like, what are you trying to prove? But the risk is, again, like you can lose yourself in this. So I meet with a lot of women, especially mothers, who like just give everything to everyone around them, and then I'm asking them like, okay, what do you do for fun? Like, what do you actually like? And they're like, I don't know, I haven't done anything for myself in the past since I've been married. So I don't have anything that I do for myself or for fun. And that's really not the way to live life. So this is why the cycle is a great just reminder of like, this is time for me to give, and like I also need time for myself to fill up my cup so that I can give from the overflow in a really abundant space. So superpowers during this phase are communication and collaboration. Like I said, you're just attractive during this phase. You might get stopped on the street. If you're trying to sell something, this is the time to do it. Like use this, like your woman power to get whatever you need accomplished. Have whatever conversations you need to have because you are like just naturally on fire. Also, when estrogen is at the peak, it increases the synaptic connections in your brain. So this can really boost your mental sharpness, your creativity, and your communication skills. So I definitely notice this one when I'm like giving presentations or talking. Like words just flow so smoothly during this phase. Like I'll be getting on my stories or talking in some capacity, and I'm like, it's just like everything I wanted to say just flowed out. Whereas other times it's like I'm tripping over my words and I'm like, why can't I talk? So this is another one of those ways that once you start to tune in, it's like really interesting because you start to pick up on these things, and instead of beating yourself up and being like, why don't I have energy? Why can't I talk right now? Why am I doing horribly? It's like, oh, it makes so much sense. Like this is, you can just give yourself compassion because you know what's going on with your hormones. So you're really magnetic. This is an outward focus time. The one thing that you want to focus on is at the beginning of this phase, like asking yourself, where do you want to focus this energy? So it's really easy to just like go off and like do all the things, and maybe you're not really like being focused in getting the thing that you actually want done. So what was your intention that you had at the beginning of the month? What project do you want to really crush? Channel, focus your energy into that project. So you can get whatever work thing that you need to get done. I gave you little questions to ask at the beginning of each phase to help you kind of navigate through the cycle. So that's the question for the ovulatory phase, is like, where do I want to use this energy for? I have so much energy, like, how can I make it the most productive? And then going into inner autumn. So as progesterone starts to rise, you start to chill out, you start to turn inwards more. This is the time to just like put your head down and really tie up all the loose ends. So it's like the completion phase. You're trying to complete all the projects that you started throughout the rest of the month. Your estrogen progesterone balance makes you more detail oriented oriented. So any like more administrative tasks that you have to get done, organization stuff. I think it's really funny because once I learned this about this phase, that it can be like a nesting period. Some people do this before they give birth, but your nesting period, it's like you want to clean and organize. Like I notice myself doing this in this phase. I'll be like, have this random inspiration to like clean the whole house. So you might notice this, like again, preparing for your menstrual phase, or even in your work environment, you want to like just like organize everything. So fall time again, turning inwards, turning the energy inwards, and you're definitely more increasingly sensitive. So this can be a good thing and a bad thing. So it's understanding when the voice that wants to come out is from a place of truth speaking, because sometimes like when you're like estrogen is higher, you're like, I'll let anything go, whatever you want to do, it's fine. And then during this phase, like you're not going to put up with the bullshit. So if you're, you know, like something's going on with your partner or friend or your coworker or one of your employees or whatever, that like the rest of the month you're like, it's annoying, but whatever, I'll let it slide. During this phase is when you're like, absolutely not, no, you cannot do that. So it's a good time to really understand if you're like, if this is coming from a truthful place of like, no, I need a boundary there, like that is not okay. You have less tolerance, or you need to make sure that it doesn't go like overboard and you're just like reactive onto another person, because that's never helpful. So tuning into yourself first and like understanding where's the truth in this. Also, if it's like your own inner critic, like you're horrible, you're not enough, you're not good enough, you're not getting enough done, like that voice in the back of your head that sometimes is really, I call her your inner bitch, like really mean to you, might be a lot louder during this phase. So just understanding like what parts of that is truth and what parts do you need to like give more compassion to and like not fully or a little over exaggerating at this phase. So your tasks during this phase is to really stay present, get everything you need to get done, tie up loose ends, and again, by the time you get back to menstruation, like you've completed so much throughout the whole entire month. You've really been focused and on track. You've taken time to give to other people. You've been really outwardly. You've gotten things done. And then when we get to the menstrual phase, you feel like this sense of completion and a sense of like, okay, I deserve a little rest and a little break. So the other way you can just like take these seasons is just into a general work environment. So if you don't really resonate with the cycles as much, maybe you're not as cyclical anymore, like the other thing you can do, especially with the work environment, I know all of us have these inner seasons in a work life, you know, like we have the times when we really have to drive towards getting a project done, and you really might need to push, but make sure you're balancing that out with some of this more internal time, like tuning back into you, what makes you actually happy, and what does success look like to you is like a question that I've been asking some of my clients lately, and even myself. It's like, what are you driving towards? Is success to you just mean working really hard? Because success to me, like you can really redefine this for yourself, but success to me is like having a balance between work and play. It's having freedom, time freedom to be able to travel where I want to travel. It's making sure I still have energy for my family and my partner and my plans. So like, what do you want success to mean? And if you were only driven towards the financial gains, just notice how that might be impacting the other areas of your life, and just reaching a success, like a quote unquote societal success, doesn't mean that you're actually reaching a higher level of joy or happiness or pleasure in your life. So understanding how to balance all of that out, I think, is important. So last thing that I have, and I'll open it up for some questions. I know, sorry, I can talk about this. But how can you incorporate, like I put a couple questions in your PDF, so what's your biggest takeaway from what I've learned, like what you've learned today? I really believe like implementing the things is the most important part. So learning is one thing, but if you don't implement, then like nothing in your life changes. So how can you incorporate what you learned into each phase of the month? And then I encourage you to like maybe like pick one task for each phase. Ask yourself the question at the beginning of the phase, and then put whatever task that you're like, okay, I need to remember to like do a little self-care, like I'm gonna get a massage during my menstrual phase. That's gonna be my commitment to myself, and put that in your calendar so that you can start taking action. And before all of that, you need to track your cycle. So get one of the apps I put in the packet to make sure you start tracking your cycle. And if you enjoyed this presentation and like you really want to dive deep into it, I really love the daily journaling and just really noting like your symptoms every single day. How am I feeling? How's my energy? So you can start to tune in. Okay, any questions?
I don't know that I have any questions, but what's really interesting to me is that inner bitch that you were just talking about, because I definitely know that I get super self-critical during that period of time, which also makes me like extra critical of all of the people around me. So that was really, really interesting to kind of have that awareness of it being more cyclical and not just a personal flaw.
Definitely. And like, let's not fool ourselves. The inner bitch comes up, or the inner critic is like with us all the time. So notice if you have a really loud inner critic, like I used to have a really loud inner critic all the time, just telling me that I was worthless and not good enough and not smart enough, not pretty enough, and you know, like all of the things. So just notice that voice, and that normally comes back to like some of the healing that you still need to do. Like it's your ego, it's trying to keep you safe, but it's like, okay, once you do the healing, that voice really goes away and gets a lot quieter.
Very cool.
Amazing. Okay, well, if you guys have any questions, I put my information in the packet. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. I post a lot more stuff about these types of topics with women's health. I'm also offering all of you a free health strategy session for showing up today. I just appreciate you all being here. So if you want to learn more about the work that I do, basically we'll talk more about you and what your goals are and where you are with your health for the most part, and go from there. So it was so fun being here. Thanks for having me. And one of the ways if you are having any type of hormonal balance, or a great way to start syncing with your cycle, is seed cycling. So Sarah's going to be talking about that next, but this is something I recommend to literally all of my clients. So I'm excited for her presentation on this.
Well, thank you so much, Brooke. We really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your wisdom with us. For anybody that is watching, I am going to put this PDF that she's prepared for everybody, as well as this video, up on the Moxie Women's Foundation events page. You got to scroll down to the bottom of the page to show you past events. So all of this information is accessible to anybody that wants it. And now we're going to turn everything over to Dr. Sarah Avery of Moon Cycle Seed Company, which I can never, ever fluidly spit those words out. I had the pleasure of meeting Sarah at the Adirondack Nationals, and it was because of the work I was doing with Brooke that when I saw that moon cycle, that word cycle, I was a little bit more attuned to stop and see what it was that she had to offer. And I've been doing the seed cycling on and off. I'm honestly not great about being diligent with it, but for about 2 months now, I would say. And I do absolutely see a difference when I am more on top of it. And I'm very interested in hearing more about the moon milk. I did have an opportunity just a few minutes ago to try the golden turmeric, is that what it's called? And I will say that it was absolutely delicious. So, Sarah, can you tell us more about your company and
Absolutely,
your
yeah.
products?
Well, Moon Cycle Seed Company is a mouthful, and it's funny that you say that because on our live on Wednesday, Brooke had a hard time saying it too, so don't feel like you're alone there.
I'm gonna just blame it on my face.
There you go. I mean, that's what I was saying too. If I have any wonky words that come out, it's just menstrual talking.
Yeah,
It's just menstrual
yeah.
talking. So, thank you for having us today, and thank you for showing up, and Brooke for her wealth of knowledge. I mean, and I just love that you're bringing this community of women together too, because I'll touch on this more too, but my biggest mission is to start these conversations at a younger age with young women, because I do feel like we got the short end of the stick with that when we were going through those classes in grade school, so thank you. So my name is Dr. Sarah Avery. I'm a doctor of physical therapy with a focus in women's health. So I am not an endocrinologist, I am not an OBGYN, so I do like to lead with that. So if you do have any food-related issues, it's definitely up to you to have those conversations with your pharmacist or your primary care physician or whoever's care you're under. So with that being said, we can move on to talking about just a little bit of my background. So like I said, I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm a professional yoga therapist. So with that, it's a 2,000-hour certification that kind of allows me to discuss nutrition and lifestyle medicine alongside of my physical therapy work. So it's kind of a nice way to integrate these nutritional aspects into some of the elements that go along with being a woman and exercising, experiencing hormone-related imbalances and pain, and then exercise fatigue during those times throughout your cycle. So my biggest mission, which I just touched on, is to start having these conversations in health classes. So who had the experience of having the males separated from the females during that? Yeah. Was your class together?
I remember health class being just like we were all sitting around in an uncomfortable
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. And I didn't learn that we had 4 phases of our cycles. Did you learn that?
Not
Do you
until
recall learning that?
college.
Yeah. So I wonder if it's just, that knowledge wasn't out there at the time, or it wasn't being shared as much. So not the fault of our teachers. I think just we're learning more. The age of the internet, we're able to explore more of that knowledge. So it's really great that these conversations are being had and that people are showing up and are being interested in how to approach the world with this knowledge. So I guess a common question that I usually get is how I got started with this. So I would say that the whole health world kind of followed me alongside of my journey to becoming a physical therapist. So, more personally, I am the oldest of 6 sisters. That usually is kind of a good indicator. I mean, we were a split family, but at one point I did have, living situations with all of my sisters. No brothers, no testosterone, lots of estrogen in the family. So, not being the oldest too, I do feel like I still do and did have a responsibility to, be a good role model as best as I can be. And my health journey is certainly something I hope that my sisters have kind of adopted a little bit of. So, I guess the most alarming thing that happened to me was coming across an article about tampons and how tampons can be contaminated. So I don't know why I guess it's my masculine brain went right to calculating how many tampons during a cycle I use on average, and then how many during a year, and then how many during a lifetime. The number will scare you. So and that's just one thing that you're putting into your body. That's not accounting for our shampoos, our cosmetics, cleaning supplies, and any of the foods that we're taking in. So those are some little things that we kind of have control over, right? So over time, and I don't say this to scare people, right? But it's the reality. Those endocrine disruptors are alongside of hormonal birth control and foods that we're consuming are a problem, and those are the things that can cause an imbalance in your hormones. So with that being said, I started to eliminate, okay, I'm going to eliminate this cleaner from my house this month. Next month, let's switch over to a more, maybe like an organic mascara, or, just making little lifestyle changes like that. So I was a bridesmaid in one of my friend's weddings, and she had another bridesmaid who came from the West Coast, and we just got talking about this conversation, and she was pretty passionate about it as well. And she brought up seed cycling to me, which I had never heard about. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I started doing it, and what I loved about seed cycling is that it wasn't this, you don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to eliminate something. You're not really coming down hard on yourself. You know, oh, I didn't go to the gym today, or oh, I didn't, you know, I had the pizza. So it's a really easy thing to actually just add into your lifestyle. So basically, I guess, you know, I started seed cycling, I want to say around the age of 24 as I was coming off of hormonal birth control. I do believe that it helped ease my symptoms of cramping. Acne was a huge problem for me, and I was, you know, I'm like, why am I in my 20s and still getting acne? Like, come on, what's going on here? And I still get it, and you know, I'm in my 30s now. But it definitely helped to reduce how much acne I was getting. I also noticed a huge shift in my mood, you know, during bouts of PMS, where you just become a person that you don't want to exist in the world as. So it really helped to stabilize my hormones throughout the cycle, so that when that time approached, I was feeling a little more balanced, a little more even, tending to my own needs. So then, you know, fast forward a couple of years later, it kept continuing to help me. I kind of went away from it and came back to it, and wanted to share this with my sisters. So I found that the sisters that were open to trying it weren't actually going and buying the seeds and then grinding the seeds. They have to be ground so that the nutrients are more bioavailable. And that was a pretty inconvenient part of the seed cycling process. So I said, okay, if that's the only thing that's stopping you from seed cycling, I'm gonna grind them for you. I'll put them in mason jars. Here you go, scoop 2 tablespoons into your food once a day. Doesn't matter how you get it in. And finally that clicked, and it was like, oh, okay, this is easy. I just have to remember to take them. So then I started doing the same thing with my friends, and then Moon Cycle Seed Company was born, because this is something that needed to be shared with the community. So then, you know, my husband is quite the entrepreneur as well, so we got into the local farmers markets, and he started off growing microgreens, which was kind of cool, and then branched off and started doing kombucha and CBD oil. And I said, well, if I'm going to spend my weekends at the farmer's market, I'm going to do my own thing, you know. So we started bringing Moon Cycle Seed Company to, you know, the Saratoga Springs markets and all the other local markets. So the online presence has certainly evolved over time, which is pretty cool, because we get to have these conversations with people in Colorado and people all across the United States. So, just my little notes here. So a common question that I get is who can benefit from seed cycling. So the process is this whole kit, right? So it's easier to look at it as a kit, and I can give you two a handout in case you are more of a visual learner and you like to. Do you have one of these?
I have several.
I'm sure you do. So these are the little informational bifolds that you would get with your Moon Cycle order. And what I like about these is that the inside tells you what nutrients are in the seeds, and on the back it just tells you how to seed cycle. So this, you get both canisters, and days 1 through 14 is ground pumpkin and flaxseed. And that helps to guide you through your increase in estrogen part of your cycle, so that follicular part of your cycle, days 1 through 14. So you would start day 1 of your menstrual cycle up until your ovulatory phase, doing 2 tablespoons of the pumpkin and flaxseed. So the pumpkin and flaxseed blend has omega-3s, you have lignans, you have zinc, which is huge. We don't get a lot of zinc in our diet. So integrating that into your diet daily is going to help fuel your body for that rising in estrogen phase. So then your phase 2 is the sesame and sunflower blend. So that is helpful for this rising in progesterone part of your phase. So days 15 through 28, so from ovulation to your next cycle. And this has a lot of omega-3 fatty acids as well, lignans, selenium is huge for this one. Selenium helps to bind to excess estrogen in the liver called oestrogen and excretes it through the bloodstream.
If I'm not mistaken, doesn't selenium also help your body to absorb nutrients better?
Yes, yes. And we don't get a lot of natural sources of selenium and omega-3s. So, you know, omega-3s too are also important to couple with omega-6s. So the combination of seeds helps to integrate that. And, you know, if you're only consuming a lot of omega-3s, it can actually cause more inflammation in the body. So it's important to get, you know, a combination of seeds with regard to this, especially if you're going to be doing this regularly. Okay, so a very common question that I get is for women who don't have cycles or who are on hormonal birth control where you don't cycle or you don't get your bleed. So funny that Brooke was talking about this, but new moon to full moon would be phase 1, and then full moon to new moon would be phase 2. So this would be follicular luteal. This is really great for women who are postmenopausal, right? And they actually do benefit greatly from consuming these seeds daily. So women who are postmenopausal and who aren't producing a lot of estrogen and progesterone still have trace amounts of those hormones. So you want to consume nutrients that are going to support what hormones are left, because they play an active role in your thyroid health, sleep-wake cycles, bone health, blood sugar regulation, and it's just a really nice way to integrate some of those nutrients into your diet. Okay. The seed cycling can be started as soon as girls start puberty, right? So I really wish that I knew about this way back before, you know, my doctor prescribed me my birth control. I really do. But it's here now, and we can kind of help along the next generation of women. Just bringing, even if it's not seed cycling, just bringing an awareness to integrating foods into your lifestyle that can be supportive. So pregnancy is something, you know, we don't want to start seed cycling during pregnancy or during, like if a woman is breastfeeding, because those hormones that are being produced, you actually want those hormones to be produced, and you don't want them to be disrupted. So don't usually recommend this for women who are pregnant or breastfeeding.
What about women who are trying to become pregnant?
Yes. So women who are trying to become pregnant do find that seed cycling can be beneficial for fertility, specifically because the follicle is being nourished by the omega fatty acids that we don't usually get in the diet. So that can be super helpful. And then also for women who are trying to come back to having a period after having a baby or after nursing. So that's a nice way to kind of come back into some regular cycles there. So any questions about that, like who it can help or for what reason? I know everybody's situations are so unique and different.
No. So would you still use it the same way if you are on hormonal birth control and do get a bleed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So you would just go along with your bleed.
Okay.
Yep. That's a good question. And also noted, somebody asked me this one time, does this take the place of hormonal birth control? I said, absolutely
Yikes.
not. Don't do that. I never said that. So, no. But it can be used. Yeah. Can this be used with birth control though? Yes. You know, it's with some hormonal birth controls, a lot of times nutrients can be kind of sucked out of the body because you're not producing the estrogen naturally. So it is a nice way to get some of these nutrients back into the body that you're otherwise missing out on by taking hormonal birth control.
What do you usually mix them with?
Well, you can really, the easiest ways are oatmeal smoothies and yogurt. I find they're just like quick, you can kind of even meal prep that. But if you really want to get into it, and if you go to Mooncycle's website, so it's mooncycleseedco.com, it's on the bottom of that bifold, there's a recipe tab, and each recipe says either this goes good with phase 1 seed cycle blend or phase 2 seed cycle blend. So, has anybody heard of the book Woman Code by Elisa Vitti?
Yeah.
great. It's a great resource. So if you flip to the kind of like 3/4 of the way into that book, there's a chart that separates all 4 phases of your cycle, and it highlights what proteins are good, what, healthy fats
I've
you
seen
should be
stuff
eating.
like that, like
Yeah.
juicing and what things are best during
Yes.
each phase too. That's cool.
So I took elements from that book and took foods for whatever cycle to correlate with the cycle blend. That's kind of like how deep do you want to get into it. It's just another nice way to look at it. So I do find that the sesame sunflower blend goes better with savory dishes like soups and salads and things like that. The flax and pumpkin is really nice for sweeter things like the smoothies or oatmeal. I did at one point make seed squares, so they were just little like no bake bars basically that had the seeds right in there. So
I'm really lazy.
yeah, so me too. So what they're really simple. They're bound together with dates, and you just use organic materials, and you just process them along with, like, you would dump the whole container in there and roll them into 14 balls, put it in an airtight container and stick them in the fridge, and then you just eat one a day. It's so easy. So I just put that recipe on the website as well for both phases. They were pretty popular, but it was just becoming very difficult to do it on a larger scale when it's fresher and easier to do at home. So.
I found though that days that I realize at dinner time, because I typically will put them in my shake in the morning.
Yeah.
But if I realize at dinner time that I've forgotten, there's been times where I'm like, oh, I'm eating spaghetti, I'm gonna just sprinkle this
Yeah.
on there,
Yeah.
and it changes the texture, but not really the flavor, and I'm still getting all the nutrients and everything. So it really is just the most simple thing ever. I even put it on my scrambled eggs one morning. Because I was just like, oh, let's see how this is. And it was fine. I mean, it's not something that I'd be like, oh, I can't wait to do that again tomorrow. But it was, I got it in that day. That was important to me, and it didn't ruin my meal.
Yeah.
It didn't, I don't recommend it on scrambled eggs necessarily, but it was fine. So it
I
really
have
is.
put them in an omelet before, where you kind of fold it in, and that was nice.
Oh, no, this was just right on top, very hesitant. It was a hasty decision. I made it, it was fine.
I've definitely done things like that where I'm like, oh shoot, I don't feel like dirtying the blender right now, so I just put it in a glass of water
That would be
or
me, yeah.
almond milk, and I'm like,
Chug it down.
whatever, it's just, the
Yogurt,
taste
it's great
is
on
good.
yogurt.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest thing, 'cause it's just,
Yep.
yeah. And Brooke actually, the other day we just posted it on our story, she made avocado toast, and it looked like it was toast, avocado, an egg, the seeds, and it looked like some kind of sriracha or something on top, and it
I
was,
could see that being good because it's got,
yeah.
avocado's a little nutty, these are
Yeah.
a little nutty, very mild, but,
Yeah.
but complementary.
Right,
I could see
right.
that being good.
Yeah, and I just kind of approach it like a vitamin, like however you can get it in. And it doesn't need to be the same time every day, or you could split up, like do 1 tablespoon in the morning, 1 tablespoon at night, just as long as you get it in. And then if you miss a day, you can double up the next day.
Oh, good to know.
And what I love about, so we actually just got new packaging, which is super exciting. So everything is screen printed right on there, and that will be launching very soon, but it has a cycle tracker on top. So you can, usually I would put the date that I started, and then check off the moons as you go through. So even if you kind of get behind, you can catch up the next cycle. Yeah. So one of those things, don't get down on yourself if you didn't get to your seeds that day. So any questions about seed cycling?
About how long do you think that if you're doing it consistently before you're gonna start really noticing a difference?
So I personally noticed a difference right at 1 month, but my PMS was really, it wasn't great. So it was a very apparent symptom that, you could really notice dramatic differences. Somebody who is using it for just fertility or postmenopausal symptoms, you may not really see any changes up front. So 1 month to 4 months is usually what I tell people. So it depends on
I think everybody's gonna be a little different, but I think that's a good.
Yeah, usually we say 1 to 4 months. Yeah, good question. Yeah. Is that? Okay. So then we started doing a little more research on cortisol, which Brooke touched nicely on. So cortisol is this stress hormone where it's great for the body. We need it. We need to be able to run from predators. And, it's evolutionary, a great thing. It helps us with exercise. But if we're getting into states where we're constantly in that, 7 to 10 range of stress more often than not, your cortisol spikes are going to throw off, all of that hormone cycle acting on the thyroid, the adrenals, your kidneys, and it's something that will throw off estrogen and progesterone and ultimately impact your sleep, your hunger, how much you're eating, and all of those secondary side effects of increased cortisol can also contribute to throwing off your estrogen and progesterone. So the moon milks are actually derived from ancient Ayurvedic medicine. So golden milk is something that's used in traditional Indian households.
I was gonna say, it reminded me of Indian food.
Yeah.
I drink it a lot when my stomach is off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a go-to, like a comfort. So in the U.S., maybe we drink like lavender, chamomile tea before bed. So in Indian homes, it would be golden milk. So we kept that traditional recipe, and then kind of added on a couple of different ones that are good not only for different times of the day, but also different parts of your cycle. So depending on what way you'd like to approach it, sometimes I just crave one or the other and don't really pay attention to those things. But all three of them have maca, reishi, and ashwagandha. So that's the little spin that we put on it, is putting adaptogenic herbs into each of the moon milk blends. So they're all equal proportions in all of the blends. So maca is particularly good for women's health, especially for women who are postmenopausal. So that's an important adaptogen to get into the diet for that phase of life. Reishi mushroom and ashwagandha are also cortisol reducing. So golden turmeric is one that I recommend for women who are experiencing cramps during their cycle. So because it's anti-inflammatory, it helps to reduce inflammation in the uterine lining during that part of the cycle. And then it also has ginger in it, which can be relieving for digestive issues during that time. So cherry beetroot is the next flavor, and the beetroot helps to support the liver. So it's helping to bind to the excess estrogen, to excrete that excess estrogen from the liver. So I like to joke around and say that I use this during the 2 weeks of my cycle that I feel like a normal human being. And then the lavender cardamom I find is most beneficial during bouts of PMS, where I need that calming, that cooling nature. And then, if you want to approach it from like, okay, if I'm taking all three of these throughout the day, I really like the golden turmeric during the morning because it's energizing, it's uplifting. I like the cherry beetroot during the afternoon because it's a little more grounding, more neutral. And then the lavender cardamom is just that very relaxing sensation, so it helps lull you off to sleep. So with the lavender moon milks, there's 30 servings in each, all of the moon milks, there's 30 servings in each flavor. So usually I just do a half of a tablespoon to 8 ounces of whatever milk of your choice. You can really play around with that. Like, I find that coconut milk goes good with the lavender, vanilla almond milk goes nice with the cherry, so you can really just play around with that and get creative. And then you just add a touch of whatever sweetener, either honey or maple syrup. So I put maple syrup in those today. It just depends on what you have on hand and what you like. So you can adjust the ratios to taste, but just know that you are consuming more of those adaptogens. So if you're sensitive to like ashwagandha, which could be a little bit energizing, maybe you're not doing that before bed, right? So any questions about the moon milks?
Lots.
Yeah, let's hear 'em.
So, for me personally, like, I love the idea of doing stuff like this, but it takes me a really, really long time to get in the habit of doing anything regularly.
Yeah.
So I've gotten pretty good about drinking shakes in the morning, throwing some seed cycling in it. What if I threw moon milk in with my shake in the morning too?
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
really like, so if you do go onto the website under the recipes tab too, we have a few I want to say smoothie recipes that actually would go really nicely with some of the moon milks too. So moon milks can kind of stand alone. You could just do that if you weren't seed cycling, but they're also a nice supplement to the seed cycling protocol, so you can kind of lump them in together. Yeah.
Okay, and the other question that I had was, so with the lavender in particular, and I get this question with my lavender coffee all the time, is it
Yeah.
gonna make you sleepy?
I mean, that is why I like to use it, but I think it's, you know, for me personally, I don't find that it's the herb itself. I feel like it's more of the aroma and the essential oil
Yeah, because I
that has
don't,
a relaxing effect, but it doesn't, it calms my, it seems that it calms my mind.
like the monkey brain.
Yeah, so that I can, you know, that ritual, okay, I'm drinking this thing that I drink before bed, and it's calming my mind so that I can lull off to sleep easy. I don't think that it's like, you know, putting me out or anything like that, yeah.
I have another question. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it or not because it's not necessarily in this wheelhouse. So my typical before bedtime thing is magnesium, and I started taking magnesium to, you know, sleep better and reduce the stress.
Yeah.
In your opinion, or do you have any insight as to whether the moon milk would go well with that, or should it be one or the other?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, of course, talking to a pharmacist or,
Yeah,
I might know one.
There's nothing that's gonna.
yeah,
They would complement each other.
Okay.
There's nothing like conflicting there.
because it's not like there's no magnesium, so it's not like you're overdosing
Right.
on magnesium before you go to bed. But that is a good question. But yeah, in terms of interactions with the herb, that might be like an herbalist question too.
Okay, I know one.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I feel like we all need to work together in these worlds too to help kind of support these different habits, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, like the work that Brooke is doing for those lifestyle aspects, you know, you're a pharmacist, herbal.
A little bit more
A little bit.
acupuncture.
Yeah, and I really think that we can all work together to help not just women, but you know, the collective and create more of that integrative approach. So that's a good example of why that is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I push caffeine, so.
I mean,
Which is also great.
Yeah.
I think your caffeine is why I'm standing here during my mission. I'm like actually standing on 2 feet, so thank you.
You're welcome. We all need it. We all have a little bit to offer.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's moon cycle in a nutshell and seed cycling in general. So, you know, Brooke covered a lot of the more lifestyle aspects, so this is a little more straightforward. You know, and it is just, like I said, a nice addition to your daily wellness routine. You're getting away from that elimination mindset, so you're not associating it with any psychological negatives, right? So, yeah, and they're fun. The moon milks are great too because they turn your milks different colors. Like, there's butterfly pea flower in this one, so it turns it blue. Kind of sounds like a little Star Wars scene, but...
Your website is on the back of these pamphlets, but for those who are watching live or will not download that pamphlet, where can they get your seed cycling, your moon milk?
So they are on mooncycleseedco.com. And just for the listeners, as a little gift, you can use the coupon code LUNAR10 for $10 off. That's basically going to get you free shipping. And like I said, all those recipes are great. And you know, even if you're not going for moon cycle stuff, try doing it yourself. The seeds need to be raw, organic. If you can get them with sustainable practices and third-party heavy metal testings, so like eliminating coppers and stuff that could be in the soil, that would be the best. And then you just grind them, blend them together, and you can do it yourself.
And for those who are local, you said you're doing farmers markets. Where
Yeah.
should they be looking for your products?
So we are always at the Saratoga Farmers Market at the Wilton Mall in the wintertime, and then we go outdoors at the High Rock Park in the summertime. And then also on Sundays at the Spa City Farmers Market at the Lincoln Baths. And then we're also at Glens Falls, Schenectady, and that's it for right now. So
The spa one, is that inside now?
they just went inside.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank you guys for coming,
Thank you.
and happy cycling.
So this whole presentation plus all of the PDFs and links to different businesses, Brooke, if you have any interest in diving into women's health and working with your feminine cycle, I highly recommend giving Brooke a call. She has been transformative for me, and the information, I think everybody needs to hear it. If you're interested in looking into some seed cycling or moon milk, absolutely, moonseedcycleco.com. I think I did it, was it right?
Moon cycles.
Give her more coffee.
mooncycleseedco.com.
There you go.
Coupon code LUNAR10 for $10 off. Also, check out some of Sarah's other endeavors. She is a fantastic physical therapist. She has a whole program that's dedicated to women's health, specifically osteoporosis. I'm going to just touch on this briefly. We did do a Fearless Female through Moxie Coffee. It's on the website. But you should start thinking about your bone density and health at what, the age of 30?
Even before, your nutrition intake impacts your peak bone density at the age of 30. So what you're putting in before that is kind of what you get at the age of 30.
I feel another workshop coming on. So check it all out. It's all great information. Thank you both very much for joining us today. Thank you for taking time to come see us. I appreciate it. And I hope everybody got some great information out of today's little workshop. And we are here if you need anything else. Thank you so much.